All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use glass bedding to clean up any edges in here, as well as the glass bedding also protects the wood from oil soaking in. Remember, being an end grain, this is going to be very porous, and it's typically why a lot of guns you'll see after a period of time from people lubricating their guns, etc. The oils soak into the wood, and it actually sort of turns it into a brisket, and it'll start flaking away. So a number of reasons why I'll do glass bedding, but those are the two primarily, just to clean up my edges, get a good, nice, tight fit so it doesn't rattle around, potentially crack, and also protect the wood. So what I use is Brownell's glass bed. There's two colors, there's brown and black. They come in a package, and then the package is there's actually two. One is a hardener and one is the actual brown stuff. And so what it looks like is that's the Brownell's glass bed, and then the hardener looks like that. And what you're going to do is, because when you receive it, there's a lot, right? This is I've been using this for a while, and so what I do is I put them in these containers, and then I just use painter's tape to seal this up. And you'll get these. This will then last for multiple projects. And what you'll find is that over a period of time, when you open this up, it sort of has a strong ammonia smell to it. That's good. Over time, it actually stales. And what you'll find then is that when you apply it in the evening, in the morning, it should be already hardened up. If it's not, usually what will happen then is that you just throw it away and get a new one. So on this particular project step here, what we're going to do is you want to make sure that you've got this release agent liberally applied. And remember, we're only going to be you're going to do these in phases. In the first phase is we're just going to do this end here. You always want to do the glass bedding such that when you're done with it, the receiver is the part that's been glass bed is going to be pulled away. You don't want to avoid putting glass bed along a straight edge like this. And we'll talk more about that later when we get to that. Usually what I'll use is aluminum foil, or I'll do it by hand. We talked a little bit about that in previous recordings. So in this step, what we'll do is I'll just use a Q-tip, and I'll just go on the edges here and inside where all the glass bedding is going to go. And the key is you want to make sure this glass bed is applied liberally in all these areas that it can come in contact with. Now you'll notice I've removed all the components in this gun. You don't really have to do that when you're doing restocking a gun. In this particular project I wanted to, because I wanted to make sure all the parts were clean, and I cleaned out all the old grease, and I'll go back and I'll re-grease it, and that'll be a later video. And then you're just going to let this dry for about 15-20 minutes, let that dry. Then what we'll do is we'll mix the glass bed, and the glass bed you'll mix in small portions of this, and what you'll do is this will just be about a 50-50 mixture. And so what I do is I'll dig some out, and just depending on the amount of work that I'm going to be doing, I'll just sort of pull out an amount that I think I'm going to be working with. Go ahead and dry that off. And then I'll get the hardener. And you want it, like I said, you want about a 50-50 mixture here. So you get about the same on the hardener. And that looks about the same. What you'll do then is you'll just mix this stuff together. I'm not ready to do that because I want this to dry. I'll just mix this together, and then we'll come back and continue on here when I'm ready to mix it. All right, so you'll mix this up, and like I said, it's about a 50-50 mixture, and you want to make sure, mix it up real good. One of the things I like about this particular product is that you got a lot of time to work with. It takes, it takes 30-40 minutes, an hour. You can be working with it. You want to move along pretty quickly, but at the same time, you got plenty of time to work with this. It's not, it's not like epoxy. All right, so from here now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply it to the wood. not the metal. And when we apply it to the wood, we're going to apply it, kind of goose out a little bit, but you don't want a whole lot. And so I'll just sort of a really nice finish when we're done with it. So first, we're going to drop the receiver down on this. And you'll notice then that this is just going to sit down on top of here, just like that. And once you drop it down, I'm using my finger in the back here to hold it in place. And next now then we're going to go ahead and put the trigger guard. Now I have the trigger plate's going to sit down in there just like that. Now on these screws, on those holes, should have mentioned this, but when you drill those holes, that screw, don't ever force that screw. When you drill that hole, if you've got it right, and you just have to open it up if you need to, that should screw in without any effort. Don't force the screw in there to kind of leave it alone. You're just going to go set it up and let that dry, and we'll come back tomorrow. And what we're going to do, I set this up yesterday, and so it's roughly 12 hours. And so what I wanted to do is just let you know this is sort of the extra that you want to keep. And you can feel, that it's dried and it's cured. The key thing here is, as I mentioned, if this starts to stale, this would still be spongy, and you do not want to remove it while it's spongy. You only want to remove it when it's hard. So if it doesn't dry in 12 hours, you may have to give it 14, 16, 18, 20 hours. And what I do is if it doesn't cure overnight and ready to separate, what I'll do is I'll just go buy some more and empty out those containers and put in the fresh stuff. But like I said, if you put it in those containers like that, you'll probably get several guns. It'll last for quite a while. So that's the key thing. This is good and hard. So this is good and ready to separate. And so what we'll do is just keep recording on. Bottom trigger plate will probably just pop out, right? Because we didn't put anything on the trigger plate. So this will come on out of here, and maybe not. And that's quite all right. But what I want to emphasize is it's good to show you that you don't want to force it, right? Because if you were to keep pulling this out, you'd end up chipping this off. And so you just want to stop. You don't want to force it out of there, chip it off now. Okay. So to take these out, you notice that's in there pretty good. What I do is I just sort of tap it around with my hand, and it'll eventually. All right. So then what you may need to do is go ahead and take a rubber mallet. I would start with the hand just to loosen it up, and then if you take a rubber mallet there, I think I just heard it click right there. And there it goes. And then it'll just pop off. I guess the main thing here I want to encourage you is that don't panic. It will be a tight fit, and it will release. But the key is you need to make sure that you have the release agent everywhere. And so now then you can kind of see in here, if you zoom in here, all this now then is an excellent fit. I'll come back with the chisel, clean off this excess. Remove off of here, what I use is I'll use just a toothbrush. I'll just scrape it off, and it'll actually just sort of peel off, almost sort of like maybe a snake shedding or something here. You can sort of see how it's peeling off. The other thing you can do is you can take some acetone. Because this is a very old finish, I'd probably start with WD-40 or some chemicals like that. But yes, in fact, you'll take some acetone, and that's recommended to remove the release agent on here. And you'll see this edge here, and you'll use that edge to chisel this off. And you want your chisel sharp, and definitely want your chisel glove on. And so what I'll do is I'll catch this edge, and maybe I start a little high, and that chisel will follow right along that edge and shave it off just like that. I will not come all the way down. I'll leave it just a little high, like that. What I'll do is when I'm sanding this, I'll have a line then that I can follow to sand this down. But that's how I go ahead and clean that up. It trims off very easy. All right, so the next step that we're going to do, we've completed our glass bedding around here. What we're going to do now is we're going to start shaping this. This will be a mixture. You know, you can come in and sort of, set a line here to come across like that. And then what you'll do is you can go out and do some sanding. And so it's going to be a mixture of things. But what I wanted to show you with regards to chiseling is you're going to use these chisels to start shaping this the way that you want. And of course now I've got my tang and my screws in, so this is in place that it's going to be. And you're going to be chiseling. And what I want you to do, if you'll zoom in, you'll notice how the wood rolls up like that. And that's all good. That's what you want. But to chisel, you have to understand how the wood works. And so let's pause here for a moment. Imagine a group of straws. This is the grain that's coming through here. And each of these straws represent essentially, and that's essentially what's going on with the grain here. Each of these, this wood has a bajillion different veins going through here. And so when you're chiseling, when you chisel, if you were to come across here and cut these, all these would cut very cleanly. But what if you were to come like this, and you came in it like this, right? Well, what's going to happen is that is going to translate into a chip. And so when that chips out, you are not necessarily in a good position. It just depends on where the chip is. So it's important to understand the way wood grows and what you're doing with regards to chiseling. And so when you chisel, what you're looking for is you're going to do a little test spot, and you're looking for it to roll up like that. And the wood's telling you, yes, this is where you're going to, and this is a good direction to go chiseling. If I were to chisel in this direction, I may not necessarily get that grain to roll that way. And so you're constantly watching for that grain as you're chiseling. And that may mean I might need to come at it from this direction, I might need to come at it from this direction, or I may even need to switch and come around at it this direction. And you'll notice when it gets to where you're doing something it doesn't want you to do, it's going to chip just like that. If you'll notice, it's very difficult to tell, but see how it's chipping in here? It's not actually cutting, it's chipping. And that's what you do not want. And so what you'll do is you'll just keep changing the direction. Your chiseling should be very smooth. And if you're not getting it smooth, you move it around to the next, a different direction. The other thing you never do is when you're chiseling, never come chisel on these corners. If you remember in the last conversation that we had, you never chisel. What happens is you're chiseling here, back to our straw analogy. What happens is you're chiseling right here, the grain gets very weak, and what will happen is it'll just chip out. Use sandpaper. Otherwise, come back around in this direction, and what I'll do is I'll rest it here, and I will come at it like this, and I'll just keep chiseling down in there. Now you see how it's shaving that wood out of there, and that's the direction that you're going to go, and you'll be safe when you come at it like that. Okay. So those are just some tips on chiseling. Once you get the basics down and understand that, I think you're going to love chiseling. Chiseling is a much better way to do this. When you chisel, it just gives you a nice clean cut, and that's really ultimately how you're going to get down to these very fine, to get this to almost look like the wood is growing off the steel, is you're going to need to use chisels to do that. If you sand or you over sand, you actually can ruin your margins there and it come down lower. Now the other thing I'll do is you'll notice I'm almost where I want to be for this particular spot in the work that I'm doing here, is I will still leave a slight edge up here. Not that, but back over here. I'll still leave a slight edge up there, and that's only because I'm still working with the wood. I'll be moving it around, I'll be bumping things or whatever. I don't want any chance. When I'm finished, I will still leave just a slight edge on here. I'll probably take about half that off, and I'll still leave a slight edge on there. And the reason for that is, you know, this gun's going to get shot, and so as you're using the gun, it can get chipped. It can, lots of different just handling can damage this. And so what I do is I like to leave just a smidge bit of wood there, so if I ever need to come back and clean it up, I can always clean it up. If you go all the way down to the steel and you have a chip or it breaks off or something like that down there, you know, you can repair it. There's lots of things you can do, but it's just, you know, better safe than sorry. I always leave just a slight edge up there when I'm working with the wood.